My name is Lex, and this is Bronx. We bought and renovated this Airstream and this camper, this tiny home, then this Airstream, then another Airstream, and finally we designed and built this tiny home. And now I'm on a mission to learn about the best travel experiences across the world. Welcome to Experiential Travel.
Welcome back to another very special episode of the Experiential Travel podcast. Today's guest is a serial entrepreneur. So a lot of the times in these episodes, we talk to a host that has a property with 7 cabins or a number of units on one property. This guest today has 6 properties with numerous amount of structures on each property. Anywhere from tiny homes to cabooses on trailers, and they look like carriages. I mean, his properties are magnificent, but today's episode is going to be a special one because what we're going to dive into is the business aspect of owning multiple properties rather than just the culmination of getting land, getting structures, and starting one property. So this is going to be a deeper dive into the actual business of creating resorts, experiential travel resorts, running a larger operation. And so I'm so excited for our guest today, Mr. Frank May. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you. Lexington,
yeah, man,
do I have to call you by all 3 syllables, or can I call you Lex, like Lex Luthor?
Please call me Lex. Please call me Lex. I actually went by Lexi for the first 18 years of my life.
Lexi. Okay.
No. Call me Lex, though. Call me Lex.
Lex. Okay.
Okay, Frank. So walk me to the beginning. How did this all start? You have 5, 6 different properties. What was the first one? Where did your journey begin with resorts, experiential travel resorts?
Yeah. So it's an accident. I'm in retail historically, and I have a chain of backyard living stores. I operate in Utah, North Carolina, and Tennessee. And it was just, we were tired of the neighbors that we were getting in a rental that was next door that shared a driveway with us. So we bought the house, renovated it, flipped it onto Airbnb in 2015. It was like, hey, this is kind of fun. I mean, we built a pool and we're hanging out with the guests at the pool and we're eating, s'mores and stuff. And we had a bunch of kids. And so it was a nice little, single serve neighbors, single serve friends. And then we lived right next to a trailer park. It was very derelict trailer park. It was over 70 years old at the bottom of Lookout Mountain. And so I was looking over there, and this one home that we were operating was performing very well because we're 1 mile from town, but we're surrounded by national forest and we're very immersed in trees. You just feel like you're out in the woods, totally secluded, and then bam, you're right there in the middle of the city. So I knew we had something, in the location. There were challenges. We've got trains nearby, but so we bought the trailer park, and it's spent about 2 years helping people move and tearing out condemned trailers and cutting up the chassis and hauling out the heavy steel. And there were parts of it that were landfill, where things were just dumped for decades. And so there was a lot of work to get it ready. And I had ordered 8 these cabins that came in on trucks, and they had wheels. And so we backed the 8 up, but then I find out, because the Hamilton County government they'd never done anything like this. Apparently I didn't think it was before its time, but tiny homes have sure become more the norm now. But at the time, they didn't know how to handle a tiny home, and they didn't know how to handle a multi-unit, single-owner STR complex, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was zoned R3, and there was a lot of debate. In Chattanooga, it's called the RPA, and they're like, what do we do? And so finally they said, okay, you're going to have to get a C1 from an R3, and you're going to have to get a special permit because single owner operator of, multiple, and I got permitted for 28 tiny homes, 28 of these little cabin things inside this park, right?
Let me ask you this: is the C1 a type of zoning?
It is.
So
commercial.
you had to switch the zoning from residential, or was it from an RV park?
It was moderately dense residential. So think of townhomes, condos. That's it wasn't an apartment. It wasn't highly condensed. It was moderately condensed residential. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I was behind the 8 ball, because here I got 8 cabins. I've got every dollar that I could scrounge together, to get sofas and toasters, and these 8 cabins, and I can't get power to them because I can't get them permitted, because I can't get it rezoned.
Oh my
And
God.
so I had 2 power poles. Probably shouldn't go public with this, but I had 2 power poles in the complex, and we ran power a very long distance. I had to buy wires, to like create our own overhead system to get power to the multiple cabins off 2 poles. So I was able to run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold on. No, 1, 2, 3. I was able to run 6 of the 8. Okay. And this was a period of about 6 months that I ran 6 of the 8. And then once all that stuff with the county got sorted out and everything passed with no problem, and I was able to get power to each individual unit, and I was able to run the power underground, then I was in a scalable position, right? And so the next 2 years we continued, 8 at a time, and now there's 27 of the tiny homes and then 4 custom homes. So I actually, other than the home we were raising our kids in, we moved out of, that's the 6,000 square footer. But then I built 2 customs. One's called, it's a chalet, a Swiss chalet, kind of, modeled it. But you got to remember, the whole ethos I'm going for is a kind of a campground. It's national park land, it's national forest, it's protected forest everywhere around us. I've got trails all over the national forest land. And so I wanted to keep it very woody, very, very rustic. And anyway, that did really well. But being in retail and operating in multiple cities and multiple states, I had anything that I conceive of doing, I conceive it to scale, like, and so here we are, we got this budding resort over here in Chattanooga, and it's booming and it's filling up and it's making a lot of money, and the retail business complements it because I sell patio furniture, hot tubs, swings, outdoor swings and stuff like that. So I'm buying these wholesale, to get into. So I put hot tubs in every one of them. Well, let me tell you, when you got 31 hot tubs on one piece of property, and you got to turn them over every single checkout, and you do one night stays, we'll have days where we're turning over 27 hot tubs, and so we have dedicated hot tub staff, needless to say, that are full-time, maintenance employees. Well, I remember talking to Charity, and she was my marketing girl for the Great Backyard, which is the retail. And I said, one day we're going to break out of the borders of this little Chattanooga place on Lookout Mountain, and we're going to be somewhere else. And then I'm going to need a name. I'm going to need a name to market them. And so I recycled a name that I'd used in retail for a furniture line that I created, and then I had given up on Timberroot. And so we just pulled Timberroot, the logo, off the shelf, and we were rocking and ready to go. I had the domain. And but in the meantime, before Timberroot came off the shelf, I bought that resort in Utah. And so I got a restaurant now, in Utah, and I got 23 units up in Duck Creek. And then And then we bought this place on the Ocoee River. We had six. Yeah, we had six at the time. Now we have nine. We got the wagons there at Welcome Valley Village on the Ocoee River, and so we got the Conestoga wagons from North Utah, shipped all the way from Logan. And you see them in the West. I saw them in Capitol Reef, and I saw them near Zion because we have a place in Zion, and so I'd seen them pop up, and they're really good, for the dry weather. Their challenges, they're higher maintenance. If you're anything canvas, is higher maintenance in the Southeast.
Yeah.
Because of the humidity and the green. Everything's green. I mean, green grows on everything, just like Washington's coasts, that rainforest. It's crazy. So yeah, we just, that was one thing after another. And there are three elements to the business, and it's difficult to be really adept and really tuned in to all the goings-ons in all parts. If you only have one silo, because anyone knows at any moment in any resort that you're operating, you're going to have an HR crisis any day, right? Like Larry doesn't show up to work. Oh God, we got hot tubs that need to be turned. The power's out in cabin number 6, and my maintenance guy's off today. It's 10 o'clock. I mean, these things are just part of the game,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So you're dealing with these. We're dealing with these things, and that's the part that's never going to get easy. But
you mentioned 3 components to it. What are those 3 components?
Well, I think that anybody that's buying land is speculating in a long-term investment, right? And granted, the Tennessee Glamping properties that we have, they're domes, and so they're relatively short-lived. I mean, you get 5 years out of a dome, you pop a new canvas top on, right? So they could go on for 15 years, but the unit itself isn't designed to be immortal. So there's the real estate component. So you're looking for properties that you can improve the value in, so that you experience long-term capital gains. There's a component where you're trading things that don't work. You're capitalizing on properties that you have that are at peak value. You're playing the real estate game if you're in multiple places and multiple properties. And the other is the design development piece. And since we build everything we operate, it's time consuming. It's it's not, you don't snap your fingers and make anything happen. You got to, anybody knows that's done septic systems and gotten, handled the utilities to a property, particularly if you're in the West and you don't have city water, getting well water could be 300 foot, 400 feet down.
Yep.
Yeah. And you might have to go through 3 digs, to hit the well, there in the West. And so all those pieces are coming into play. Part of it obviously is, you're doing a cost benefit analysis on everything you do. Like, can I get a return on investment on this?
Of course.
And so a lot of it is speculative. And like, how far do you carry the custom design and decor? Do you put hand paintings in there and pay high prices for hand paintings? Do you get a professional photographer and frame the professional photography and put it in there? Do people pay for that? Are they willing to pay for that? Can you put the price up there to justify that, right? And so what I was doing was looking for the main things that people were looking for early on in this concept of clustered rustic resorts. Is the idea that was being born. And just trying to really flesh out each one of the units so that it was a full-bodied experience that you would want to have in the mountains.
If you could rank the top 3 amenities or things that drive that ADR to the highest degree, what would it be? Because you mentioned basically, are people paying for custom photographs? My vote would be no. They don't care if there's a hand drawn painting or not in there,
That's
but they
right.
do
I
care
agree with you.
about certain other things. What would you think that are the top 3 things that people are paying that high nightly rate for?
Okay, so they're going to tell you in hospitality, the number one search for amenity is a swimming pool. Nothing else even like comes close. Now we're putting pickleball courts in and stuff like that. We're doing a lot of things to make it more sticky. Coffee shop over here in a caboose over here at Wauhatchie, and make it more sticky. Meaning, we got trails on the property. You know, we have access to water for fishing. We have a swimming pool. We have hot tubs at every unit. If you can't get a pool, because it's expensive and it's a real pain, I mean, building a pool for a commercial environment, there's a lot of hoops to jump through, and half of them are on fire. And so the portable hot tub is a nice surrogate, but you open a world of hurt when you go there. It has a 15% effect on occupancy. But you have to be prepared to deal with the difficulty and the liability. And so you don't want to just throw it in place and pretend that pixie dust is going to make it work. You need to understand how to keep a body of water clean. You need to have a plan for turning the body of water over between guests. I mean, all states require that. A lot of people don't do it in the STR segment. They don't turn the body of water over every guest, but it is a code that all states have that is required.
I didn't know.
Yeah. A lot of people, because the STR industry is not as regulated as hotels, right? But when you get into kind of a resort complex, they start paying attention. And then you get to learn what all the little state guys are looking for.
Exactly. Okay, so
Yeah,
jacuzzi would be number 1 for you. What would be 2 and 3?
Yeah, think about the setting, right? I mean, your unit is it. I haven't been there, but it seems like it's all there out on its own. Not a lot of light pollution, so you get this majestic Milky Way across the middle of the sky. But I think basically people, if they're not coming for the place, what you've got to do is you've got to have something a little bit more immersive and experiential, like a view. So, like, people just with a good view, they just like to sit there for hours drinking coffee, reading a book.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And you look at it online and you look at the listing and you're like, yeah, I'll pay $150 more a night, to get that. And then, the STR market has been through a lot of change recently. And the easy money got a lot of people into the industry that were not professionally committed, which is fine. It was great. I mean, it just kind of blew the whole thing open. Problem is that we reached saturation and kept going, because so many were being added. And so a lot of people that have STRs are in panic now, because a house in town that's just like every other house that has the IKEA sofa, just like every other house, you're either in this slaughterhouse war on pricing, and you're running a 4-bedroom in an urban environment down to $150 a night to try to get somebody in it.
Yeah.
Which is a bad bet. Or you're yanking it and putting it into long term now, and so I do think supply will correct itself. But what your podcast about, I think, is it's about understanding the whole experience that somebody. So we cater to adventure travelers, right? And so you want to think like an adventure traveler. You want to think about what they're here to experience, and what they want to come back to. After they've been hiking all day, or rappelling down a waterfall, or jumping off the side of a mountain on a parasail thing.
Yeah.
They come back, and what do they want? And so and another thing is, there's people in the industry that have commodities, like we were talking about with the home, with the IKEA sofa. That's kind of a commodity now. Um, we're in a different sector altogether, because people are taking time out of their life with people that they want to create memories with, because memories create relationships. And so this is like a big deal, you know what I mean? And they may not be spending a fortune, but to them, it's very important. They only get 3 days off. They're using it at your property. You really want to be firing on all cylinders.
Yep.
And you want to hit all their buttons. You want to deliver the experience that they're looking for. And so, yeah, your mind is, in a kind of a creative. Obviously you're thinking that way.
Yeah. Talk to other hosts or people that want to be in this space. It's really diving into creating the experience. The experience has to be in the back. It has to be the car pushing the trailer. It has to be in the forefront of your mind, because at the end of the day, that's what is separating us from being just a house in the city that you're going to book, right? It's going to be what do they want to do on the 3 days that they have off, and how can we create an experience around hospitality, rather than create hospitality and then throwing in an experience. And so it's creating that experience. And I like what you mentioned with number 2, is that you're taking basically the surrounding area and creating an experience around that. So you're taking
so that they get to experience it.
Exactly.
I mean, what they came for,
Yeah,
right? If it's the forest, if it's the river, if it's the mountain, if it's the ocean, that's what they came to experience. And so you put them right there. You give them, you want to give them theater seating, more or less. For yours, it's theater seating to the Milky Way. I have a house in Zion, and it's kind of nice. I'm far enough out of St. George, so at night I walk out every single night when I'm out there, and I just stare up and my neck breaks, because I can't get enough.
Yeah.
When the moon goes down. Yeah, it's amazing, and those are those high moments in life, when you do something special to get access to those things. I mean, every day we come home to our neighborhood home, we park in the garage, we sleep in a bedroom with a window on this one wall, and we look at the neighbor out of the window, and these are our lives. And so we're going for a whole bunch more, when you're going to one of our properties, and I will say, I didn't mention the third silo. The third silo is, it's the icky business of running the property, making sure that all mechanical systems are operational, making sure the cleaning standards, making sure that inventory is present when they check in, making sure that their expectations are delivered. And when you multiply that across multiple states and multiple rooms and multiple, it obviously gets more complicated, and you want to standardize as much as you can. But just the communications are a really important thing. And I mean, if you're a property manager, that if you communicate the lock-in, the access code to the customer one way, they're going to get there usually by email. 25% of people don't check their email. So if you're sending it by email, they get there and they call you, and they're like, I didn't get my access code. And you're looking at the email that went to them.
Yep.
I mean, you're like, what do you say? Yes, you did, dumbass. I mean, no. You're like, I'm sorry, Miss McGillicuddy. let me resend that. Like, how about I text it to you?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you really want to profoundly simplify things. 'Cause, just think about stress points. Even the TV, right? Um, you get in from your hike, you're pooped beyond belief. You got your hot chocolate, and you put your feet up and turn the TV on, and everything's streaming, right? I mean, it's all on demand stuff, and then nothing's logged in, right? No big deal. So let me log in, but then you've got all these uh, services cracking down on password sharing, and when you're
Mm-hmm.
moving geographical locations, now they're cutting you off, right? And they're just like, whoa, looks like you're in a different place. Should we relocate your home? No, I don't want to relocate my home. So what we've done is enabled all TVs to cast. So that you just bring your cell phone, you're logged into all your little streaming accounts,
It's a great solution.
and you just toss it up on the screen, right? And you don't have to log in. And the other thing about people logging in is they always leave it logged in, then they call you and they're like, "Oh God, I
Can you
think I left my
Yep.
Netflix logged in."
Yep.
Yeah, can you?
Okay, so I mean, we talked about so much just now. I want to rewind back to the beginning of this conversation, and I want to pick your brain on how you were able to expand from those 8 units to 25 units. How you were able to finance it. Were you cash flowing enough that you could just roll over the money into the expansion? And then, I mean, you've expanded insanely well into different states, into different markets, into more units. Uh, I would love any insight that you have on how you were able to expand so quickly and so well, while maintaining the nuance of what makes you special.
Right. Well, I'm not. I'm never going to do a pep rally cheerleader. You buy my book and you're going to make $1 million and you're going to retire by 40. BS. That's not my shtick.
Frank, you're not a guru selling a course.
I'm not trying to sell any process because I think we were talking about experiences. I'll use this to make an illustration. When you're creating an experience, there's a whole lot of subjectivity built into it, and you don't know how the guest is going to perceive the experience that you've put together for them. And there are some things that you could get perfectly right and you put out there and you got 50% occupancy. And then there are other things that you do and you put out in the middle of nowhere where nobody travels to, and you can't, it's never empty. You can't even get inside of it to do a deep clean. I mean, there's the subjectivity side. So there is pixie dust, right? And we're guessing, what it is and how you're gonna sprinkle this on the guests. Well, it's in our journey to develop a business, I think that most people that have made it by some definition, if they're honest, are going to say there's a whole lot of luck. I mean, I was the right guy in the right place at the right time. I met the right person, or, if it hadn't been for Larry and his $1 million he gave me, now I didn't use any of that, but what I did was, I have the retail business, which generates cash. And so, and anytime you're growing a business, you're not taking money home generally, right? I mean, it's very expensive to develop new properties and to build new houses and to hold those houses, right? And you don't want to get over leveraged because then you have no wiggle room, or you can't, prices come down because occupancy's gone down, and suddenly you're underwater and you're breathing through a snorkel. And so you want to keep your equity position good. So, I mean, that was the first thing. As I've grown organically, I haven't taken anybody else's money. Yes, we were able to cash flow a good bit. I took a note. So use the land as collateral to take the first 8. And then once the first 8, there's an improved value and there's proven cash cycle. I was able to get a little more, but on the next batch, I only borrowed for 4. I didn't borrow on all of them. And on the next batch, by the time I got to the final batch in Wauhatchie, which was 5 units, I paid cash for all 5.
Oh, that's amazing.
Right. So I'm maintaining my equity position, and I'm safeguarding so that I'm not paying out. I don't have this. And all commercial debts reset every 5 years. And who knows where it's going to be in 5 years. So, yeah. So about 40% of the units in Wauhatchie have no lien value. You know what I mean? They're just they're owned free and clear. So I'm I'm lucky to be in that position where I had pre-existing asset that generated cash. Now, my thinking is I'm getting into my upper 40s. I have 8 kids. If I'm going to provide something that's around for my grandkids, it can't be chump change, right? I mean, it's so I got to do it kind of on an industrial scale, more or less. But here's what happened though. What I saw is that if you study any industry, it's really cool to look at the beginning of the industry, like where people started, and many of them started in their garage. Hewlett Packard was a garage company in California, and that's. But as an industry matures, consolidation starts happening. Now, you got to decide: do I want to be a swallowed fish, or do I want to be a fish that swallows? And if you're going to be a fish that swallows, then you've got to pay attention to the right things that are going to make you competitive, nimble, and create a compelling story to your product. You're looking for long-term durability, right? You got to be willing to flex very quickly. So if you got something that's not performing, don't get emotionally attached to it. Let it go.
I like that. You
know what I mean? It doesn't matter how much of your ego you get tied up in something. Egos sink ships, always. I mean, the old story about the Titanic is that the men that built it were like, this is unsinkable. They're beating their chests like King Kong. And then halfway across the ocean, it's gone, so don't, what we're trying to do is do the right thing. It's not to do necessarily what we want, and you're going to choke, I mean, you're going to get it wrong, and you're going to be like, oh, that sucks. But somebody wants your suck, I mean, when you slip and fall, it suits somebody's purpose somewhere. So you're going to be able to offload it. And so there's been a lot of that. I mean, I bought a mountain in North Carolina. What was it? A year and a half, 2 years ago, maybe. And it had this home, right? It was on Cold Mountain, and it sat on its own near the peak. There was a secondary peak to Cold Mountain, which is one of the highest peaks in that part of Western Carolina. So I had one of the best views, you've seen anywhere, 360-degree views. And I was going to develop this as a high-end luxury resort, right? But the driveway, is a 2.5-mile driveway. You're on the edge of a cliff through parts of the driveway. So every Floridian was shitting bricks that came. And, they would write in their review, be prepared for an epileptic seizure, and that turns people off. And it's very remote. And so it just didn't take off very well. Well, I love this place, for me and my wife to go hang out. We love this place. You just sit there and drink coffee till you're shaking, because the views are so good. But it was not going to be a financial performer. I mean, it was going to be at best break even, but more likely I was going to lose 15% annually, And so as much as I liked it,
You have to
You
cut it,
know?
and that's where the ego comes in. Is being able to
Yeah,
look at the raw data, look at the numbers, and make a decision
that's right.
not based off of, oh, I have a feeling, but then make a decision off of the numbers. Now, I do think that that is an art. I do think that there's a game that we have to play, that when creating a property, I have this feeling and I have this concept and this idea that I think is going to work, and I need to rely on my gut, but then also be able to know when to pull out of a deal, and when to rely on looking at the
Or
numbers.
when, yeah, and when to change. I was on this Facebook board, and somebody put a question about cleaning fees, because you hear all this ruckus about people pissed off, about fees, and they get really ornery when you say, "Hey, I want you to do 16 things and pay $200 to clean this house." So what was interesting is there were about 400 responses to this question on this Facebook wall. It was an Airbnb Facebook wall, and people were like, I feel 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 like we did this. I feel like we did better when we did this. Well, we actually conducted an experiment because we have 27 identical cabins, that are all on the same campus. So geographically, they're united. Their amenities are united. They all have hot tubs. And so what I did was I took, for the cabins, I took away the cleaning fee. We upped the price a little bit, on a daily basis. And we put in the headline, no cleaning fee, right? So all the OTAs, it showed in our direct booking site, because we get a lot of business through direct bookings, and but anyway, it did not have a positive effect on occupancy.
For having no cleaning fee, it did not have a positive effect. Meaning
That's
that
right.
it did not.
That's
It
right.
didn't change anything by having no cleaning fee as having
No,
a
and
cleaning.
interestingly enough, I ran a counter test, okay, where I dropped the price of the no cleaning fee cabins, okay, because if your price with the cleaning fee is $200 a night, and I was charging $160 a night for the no cleaning fee, but I'm not charging $130 a night for the one with a cleaning fee. But then you have the $70 cleaning fee, so you're at
200.
$200. So you're on more on a night, but on a 3-night block, you're better off,
Yeah.
right? But nonetheless, I dropped the prices so that they were even with the cleaning fee and the non-cleaning
Yeah.
fee. So it was
So you were going to pay the
remarkably. You're going to be cheaper on the non-cleaning fee no matter what,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Because if you stay 6 days and you have a $60 cleaning fee, that's $10 a day, right? So that's $10 more a night with a cleaning fee. But if I put the price the same and I eliminate the cleaning fee, you would expect that more of the traffic would move to those units. The opposite happened. Less rentals. Occupancy was down in the 4 test units when they were altogether cheaper to stay in.
But with no
And so
cleaning fee.
I chucked the idea of no cleaning fees altogether, applied it to all properties again.
And Frank, we have a very similar story with that. We did the exact same thing. We took off no cleaning fee for one of our units. We have 7. One of our units we did no cleaning fee and made the nightly rate higher than it was, and occupancy went down. And so we had to take a step back and be like, okay, well, everyone, because I had the same thing. Everyone and their mom was like, oh, you have to get rid of your cleaning fee and just make it up and charge a higher nightly rate because these booking channels are wanting to promote no cleaning fee. And we played that game, but I think going back and not having ego and looking at from a business standpoint is right on track. I think that's a great idea. You're not like most guests that we interview. So when I talk about the dream team, I talk about your your cleaning crew, your handyman, and uh, the lifeblood behind the organization, the people that make it keep on running. I'd love to know who is, do you from a larger uh, corporate structure, what's your team like handling? Do you have a team that handles all of the resorts and all of the bookings from a larger corporate structure? How is your business structured to handle all of the resorts and places that you have?
Yeah, anything that you can consolidate, you're apt to do so. I mean, money alone makes a hard case for that. So corporate functions are differentiated from uh, local functions, and corporate functions are less involved in day-to-day operations. You have advertising, marketing, website. I mean, that's a behemoth right there. If you're really trying to build a brand, you're pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring and creating content. And then you have the finance piece, and honestly, a lot of the hospitality businesses I've bought or gone to buy, it's very Mickey Mouse. When you get to their financials, um, you got to do a lot of filling in, reading between the lines, asking questions. Some of them are so bad that I just walk away. Like, I can't trust anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously accounting and is a big piece of it. Marketing is a big piece of it. Operations. So operations would determine the technologies that are adopted, how those technologies are utilized, and what the best practices to develop are, right? And then we disseminate those through the team. This is how we're going to do things, and then you make that uniform. So you have a person or persons conspiring about what is the best way to operate the day-to-day functions of the business, with multiple parties in multiple places. And
What does that look like for you guys? What's your team consist of from a more corporate standpoint, not the day-to-day on property functions, but from a business
so
standpoint?
guest services is another. When I say guest services, I'm talking about people that answer email questions, answer the phone when people call, tell people where they can go get a burger, that night, and take the call. Oh gosh, the power's out. What do I do? Right. And that's guest services. And so we rotate so that somebody's always on. We do 7-hour shifts and people rotate. And some of the staff works from home. Those that work at night work from home. Those that are on during the day, during Monday to Friday, work in the corporate office. We don't have a desk clerk like a hotel has anywhere in any of the 6 campuses. So you don't go to an office and check in. As a matter of fact, I was standing at the Wauhatchie property in Chattanooga the other day talking to my new maintenance head, and these people are driving exceptionally slow. And I said, that's suspiciously slow. Like, they have a question. And he said, yeah, they're probably looking for the office. So I stepped in front of the Buick, put my hands up, stopped them, asked them to roll down the window. I was like, it looks like you want to ask a question, but you were afraid to roll down the window and ask the bald guy the question. So I'm here to answer your question. And they were like, yes, we have a question. Where's the office? I was like, there is none. So, you're going to have to call this number. You're going to have to talk to the team. Well, I mean, most STRs are run that way.
Yeah.
Right. But most hotel resorts are not.
Mm-hmm.
And we stand right in between. obviously you're not going to have a lobby when you're checking into a 4-bedroom home in Salt Lake City. You're
Exactly.
going to go use the electric lock. And we don't anticipate that. But when you get into a campus with 30 homes and trails and people walking all over and driving all over, you're like, there's got to be somebody here governing this, And so that's one of the pieces that we consolidated. Functions when you get to a certain scale, like inventory control, are very important. Developing new products that are proprietary. So product development, those are corporate functions. HR is a corporate function.
How big is your team that you have managing all of the corporate side of it?
Only about 12.
12. And then you have on-site people that do maintenance and turnovers and all of the things that need to be on it. Where is and those 12 either work in a corporate office or at home. Where's your guys' like home base corporate?
Oh, we're in a historic bed and breakfast building on the side of Lookout Mountain, half a mile from Wauhatchie in Chattanooga. And most people come into the office every day to work. We can flex. Carlos, who's in head of operations, when his dog is going nuts, he'll stay home and work. But I mean, by and large, I see. I'll give you for instance. My accounting department was in St. George, Utah, and I'm in Chattanooga. And so my CFO actually moved from Chattanooga to St. George, and we set up an office. We had a little warehouse there. We were receiving product in for the retail store because I have a retail store in St. George. And after about a year and a half, I said to John, I was like, you know what? I think that me, the CEO, you, the CFO, our level of communication has depreciated, when we're relegated to Zoom. And I don't think that we're functioning effectively as a team. And he was like, you are going to ask me to move back to Tennessee, aren't you? And it's like, yeah, I am, John. I am. Yeah, so he did. He moved back this summer, and we built a new finance team here in Chattanooga. And so, yeah, I mean, there's certainly a benefit, creative collaboration. And you and I are in the business of bringing people together.
That's it.
And so to me, it would be a bit abnormal to say there's nothing important about human contact.
Yeah.
Like if I have an important meeting, like I'm cracking the biggest deal of Timberroot's career, I'm gonna go wherever the flesh and blood needs to be so that we're close together, so that I'm looking them in the eyes and they can trust me and I can trust them and I can know them. Zoom covers over that stuff. There's a level of impersonality.
Absolutely.
It's certainly better than the phone, but the real important stuff you need to be in person for. So, I'm not a believer that offices are dead. I'm a believer that we work well together.
I completely
It's
agree.
distracting, gets on your nerves.
Yeah. So having this big of a organization that is running numerous different properties, 25 keys on one of the 27 keys in one of the properties, and having, I mean, you're having probably 50 to 100 people checking into your properties every day. Um,
It's about 150.
150. I mean, that's
Well, every big turn, the big turns are Friday and Sunday.
yeah, of course.
Uh,
Yeah.
so those you'd have like 150 to 200 on a Friday or a Sunday.
That's amazing. Now, it sounds like you have an incredible team that supports you and backs you. As the CEO, what is your day-to-day stuff, and then how much of it is what's going on in present time, and then how much of it is months in the future, years in the future, decades in the future?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because I I had to learn something about me that, and I think this probably applies to everyone. Um, I really, really, really like to get into the woods and work. I mean, I like to cut trails. I like to paint. I like to nail. I like to build things. Obviously, I'm not afforded many opportunities to do that. But I'll tell you this, that in that silo, that all silos, like the operational silo, the real estate development silo, and the construction and design silo, they all have long lead times. Probably the shortest is in operations. But if you're going to migrate to a new PMS, you're going to rebuild your website.
Oh,
You're talking
that's
about
a nightmare. We just did it on one of our rentals. We switched
yeah,
just one of them.
6 months.
It's crazy. And
Yeah,
the learning curve to learn the new PMS in itself is a nightmare.
Yeah, and the bigger they get, the more that curve is like this huge arch. So, you're planning a PMS move maybe a year in advance, right? But you're planning a resort build maybe 2 years before breaking ground, and it's a 3-year build, right? So you have a 5-year horizon where you can finally say, I'm done with that part of it. So there's something very difficult about finding yourself satisfied. Like if everything that I'm doing, if 100% of what I'm doing is cast into the future, then I go home after a string of days and I'm just like, blah, I'm like empty. I'm like, this is BS, because I feel like I'm getting nothing done. Now I know in my head, rationally, that everything has to be done 5 years ahead of time. Okay, so I'm doing these things for 5 years, reward. Okay, but I think that you want to, if you're the visionary type person, not the manager type person, you can't just live in the vision. You have to live in reality too. And if you're not satisfying that need, you're going to become altogether ineffective. Like even your vision part, that's supposed to be the engine of who you are, in the company, it's just going to run out of gas. And you're going to be like, everybody probably gets into this when there's, I mean, you can get into analysis paralysis, right, where you can't make a choice, or you've got 32 things you could do today, and you freeze up, and you're like, oh God, which one do I do, right? So obviously, the ability to narrow down silo by silo, this is where I can be effective today, and then narrow it down and say, this is all I can do today. I need to achieve these things. No, I'm gonna focus on this for the 2 hours that it takes to do this. But as long as you can move it off your desk, or move it off the checklist, there's you're padding your stamina. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like,
yeah. So
like
what I'm kind of getting from you is that, because I'll talk from personal experience. I've always been the one that, before I do anything, I need to know tactically how I'm going to do it. I'm not one to like, yeah, it's just going to get done. Like, we'll figure it out. I'm always like, I need the tactical steps before I move forward, because then it's completely in my control. I'm a huge fan of I need to know how to do things in order. Like, I learned construction because I didn't want to build any homes without the idea of at least knowing how to frame a home, knowing how electrical works, knowing how plumbing works, so that at least I can talk the jargon of it, talk the nomenclature of trades. One, so I know I'm not getting ripped off, and two, I can understand the bigger play. So I've struggled personally with having the 5-year vision, thinking extending the time horizon, but then also being able to think tactically. So I think that that's not always the easiest thing. Have you always been able to think in longer time horizons, and then, like, as you were mentioning, knocking off the things off your desk and being able to complete one task at a time? Did you have both of those skills, or did you have one of those skills and have to learn the other skill? And if you had to learn the other skill, what do you suggest for someone who wants to learn that skill? How would you suggest for a person who wants to learn that skill to learn that skill?
So how old are you?
I'm 27, or just turned 28. Actually, it was just my birthday.
Okay, well, there's your problem. You can't fix that. I mean, I don't mean that as an insult, but what I mean is that I mean, we're humans, right? And there's a generic experience to being human. We go through puberty, we all do, right? I mean, we fall in love, we all do. You know, generally speaking, you know, we have our first baby and our life has changed and blah blah blah. There's these common experiences, but as you watch life cycle, historic events, relationships, you know, projects, as you just watch this cycle over and over again, your mind naturally changes as you mature, and your vantage point. So your appetite for risk at 60 is not going to be what it was at 20, right? And it shouldn't be. I mean, you probably haven't matured, right? There's a problem if you're still at 60 and you feel immortal. But what I like to say is, you know, when I was a teen, I thought about that night, what I was going to do that night. When I was in my 20s, I thought about what I was going to do that weekend. When I was in my 30s, I thought about what I was going to accomplish. Early 30s, like what I was going to accomplish, you know, that year. And then through my 30s, I started to think in 2-3 year blocks of time. Okay. Now I'm over the horizon. Like I'm closer to death than I am to birth now, right? And so fundamentally, my vantage point on life has changed, and it's wired me to so I'm literally looking at life like, what is the world that my grandkids are going to inhabit? What is the world that I'm going to leave them? What is my legacy? Because I may be gone tomorrow. When you're in your 20s, you're not thinking like that, right? And you also know that everything has to grow. You know, if you've ever kept a garden, if you've ever grown cows and slaughtered the cows for meat, you don't just, you know, plop a calf out and there you got a mature cow that you're gonna, I mean, it's 2 years, and then you got to fatten them and marble them, and, you know, and then you harvest them, and it's the same thing, you know, with the field. And then if you go at the field too hard and you plant and plant and plant every year, then you got to use synthetic fertilizers and to trick the soil that it's healthy, and it's not, you know. And so I do think that there is an element of having watched time pass that prepares you to just sit with longer blocks, right? You've been through far fewer 5-year periods in your life than I have. And so if you say to me, well, this is 5 years away, that's a freaking eternity, dude. I'm going to be like, are you kidding? My kids were just in diapers and now they're going off to college.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that the mind matures at its own pace, and there's wisdom gathered from watching life cycles. But I also think that I do see people that were not half as dumb as I was at their age, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you're probably a lot smarter than I was at 27.
I would definitely not say that. I
But
feel like I'm making
but-
this up as I go, to be honest with you.
Well, well, good. Then you're in the right place, because you're going to be doing that for the next 40 years.
Yeah.
So get used to it,
Yeah.
you know?
Being comfortable in the uncomfortable is what I always say is.
We call
Go ahead.
waiting in the unknown.
I like
right?
that, Frank. I like
Yeah.
that. Waiting in the
Yeah,
unknown.
it's like it's hard, and when you're young, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Like your kid, you're on a road trip to Florida.
Are we almost there?
How
Are we almost
many
there? Are we
30-minute?
almost
Yeah. When are we going to be there, Dad? When are we going to? I just told you 30 minutes ago, baby. We're going to be there, and then you finally like, we're going to be there when we get there,
there? Mhm.
right?
Yep.
You
I
know.
also, switching gears, I think translating that to finances, and this is strictly like a personal experience that I went through, is when the moment when I wasn't struggling to figure out how I was going to pay my bills every month, like that little shift for me opened up the idea of thinking longer. And I think that the number one thing for me when I was starting my business and where we're at now is being able to look at, oh shit, how am I going to pay for groceries this year is when I first started, or this year, this tomorrow or this month, and how I'm going to pay the assistant this month to, okay, the bills are taken care of. What strategic moves am I making over the next 5 years? What moves am I going to make this month that are going to then translate in the next 5 years? And I think that ability to think in longer time horizons only stemmed from getting out of the quote unquote rat race and being able to think in longer time horizons.
That makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like a society that's poor doesn't make time for art because art doesn't pay, right? They're just trying to eat.
Yep.
Don't give me a painting, I can't eat it, you know? So as a civilization becomes wealthier, they become more distracted. Philosophical thinking, they got time to sit around and ponder. You know, they got time to sit around and debate. They got time to sit around and create. So naturally, I think that as you achieve margin, you know, you also achieve security, so you become less worried.
Yeah, but I also think that that can happen in the reverse. I don't have kids. I want kids one day, but I don't think you're ever ready to have kids. I think when
I agree with that.
When you have kids, you figure it the fuck out. And so I think
absolutely.
And so I think that there is also that same little piece there, that security and time on this planet allows you to have the knowledge to extend the time horizon, but also being thrown and the necessity level forces you to have that as well. So I think that there is a balance on both sides.
Right, I agree, and that's what I'm saying. You can achieve a more disciplined, visionary mind younger. It can be done. It is a discipline, like you said, and sometimes it's just luck. You know, so what I mean by that is, if you're born lucky, you're born to a rich family that gives you $1 million to start with. That's freaking lucky, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you did anything spectacular.
And one of my mentors, I have relates a lot of things to poker, and he says that you're given a hand, and you have to play the hand that you're given. And people can win with pocket aces. They can also win with a 2-7. People can lose with pocket aces, or they can lose with the 2-7. You have to play the hand that you were given to the best of your ability. And I think I
Yeah, but you
resonate
also
really
have
with that.
to. It takes some wisdom to discern what that play is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
and every success is marked by failure, so you're gonna get it wrong. You may be, if you got 5 options and you don't know the answer, you've got a 20% chance of getting it right. You may be lucky enough to get the answer right, but more likely you're going to get it wrong. And then you're going to look at why you got it wrong, and you're going to say, now I see it better. Now I see it clearly. This is how I'm going to do it differently.
And that percentage changes
You
from
know?
20 to now 40% likely that you'll
That's
get
right.
the right next
That's
time.
right. That's right. So, process of elimination.
Exactly. Frank, we've been talking
Yeah.
so much, man. I want to end it off
Yeah.
with one piece of advice that you would give someone who wants to create an experiential travel destination, a resort of what a similar type of resort that you offer. What would you embark a piece of advice with?
Well, are we pretending that they have the money? So we're, I think that there are so many factors that go into that. Obviously, achieving the means is one of the factors, and the weirder you get, the harder it will be. You know what I mean?
But at the same time, the more profit will be most likely.
That's right. That's right. But you don't go up to a bank and say, "Hey, I got whiskey barrels I want people to sleep in."
Imagine the first guy who said, "I built a grown adult treehouse, and people are going to pay me a lot of money to stay in it."
And they are $450 a night. I obviously, it's like you said, you wanna know how you're gonna do it when you go in. I think though that what you're looking for are the touch points that convey the sensation of either luxury or the emotional sensation. I don't know. Maybe it's safety. Like maybe that's the deep emotional chord we're looking to hit. But all you got to do is get on Instagram and start looking at the reels of what all these creative little Airbnb people or these SDR people are advertising, and they all have the same sort of shtick. They got the selfie on a stick, and then there's a woman in a flowing silk dress that walks out onto the balcony. The wind's blowing, and then she looks back at the camera, and then she shows you the door. Anyway, there's this whole sick. So you don't want to fall into the rut. But there are elements of that are speaking to what people's hearts are longing for. What is it in that they're after? And I think the good move is if you understand what those motivational emotions are, then you understand there's a lot of different ways to speak to it. Like you're not captive to the fad of the moment. Because can you imagine, like, let's say my little wagons, let's say they made $1 million a year, each wagon just printed money. Well, and everybody was like, I just want to make a lot of money. Then everybody would get wagons, right?
Yeah.
And then instead of $350 a night, you'd have $100 a night.
Yeah.
Because it'd be so many freaking wagons, it'd be a commodity.
Yeah. And that I think is the most important part, is when you providing enough value so that you don't compete for commodity, but are competing on experience and value that you're offering. Because
Absolutely,
it's not a race to the bottom then. It's a race to the most elevated experience, which justifies then your nightly rate.
You hit the nail on the head. See, you're a lot smarter than I was at 27.
No, absolutely
A
not.
lot.
Oh, I have.
A lot.
You didn't have Frank May to learn from Frank May when you were 27.
Well, I had Tom May, but I was dumber than a box of hammers, and I didn't want to listen to what Tom had to say.
I understand. Well, Frank, I appreciate your time, man, and I appreciate you being on the podcast. I know that to all of the listeners out there, this was nothing like our normal podcast, but I mean, you had so many beautiful, beautiful nuggets in there, and so many incredible insights on how to actually where everyone wants to be. I feel like you're light years. I started this with saying that you're light years ahead of majority of the people in this space, and it's amazing to learn from you and be able to pick your brain.
Well, thank you. Thanks. It was a pleasure. I don't usually get to put experience into words, and so it's kind of a treat to like, you know, I can actually package this experience in a way that people understand it and help somebody. Wow, that's cool. So